public policy can be a very theoretical subject, and most intellectuals and academicians can go on speaking about it at length, but let me speak from my experience. So good public policy is about data, good public policy is about government taking a retreat, the private sector creating wealth. The good public policy is about consistency of policy, clarity of mind, and ensuring that intersection with the citizen should only be digital, it should never be physical, and that all government forms should not be more than half a page. They should all be digital, not more than 8 to 10 columns. All rules and regulation in government should never be more than 2 pages. So no form should be more than 1 page, no rule should be more than 2 pages, and no act should be more than 3 pages. How do you transform, as a public policy, how do you transform lives of traditional fishermen? Now, fishermen, their production was low, their productivity was low, and whatever cash they used to get, fisherwomen used to transport on the fish basket on their head to the city. And therefore, there are several challenges to improve their livelihood. So, the interventions as a public policy, what do you do? So first and foremost, the challenge was to enhance their production and productivity. And therefore we introduced outboard motors which enable them to go much further into the sea to get a higher catch. We got new fiberglass craft. This is all new technology at work. So new fiberglass craft so that they could enhance their productivity. We got new fishing nets, which were then known as disco nets. So we had to work with a lot of technical experts so that we could introduce new technology for the fishermen. Outboard motors had never been used before in the fisheries sector, and we fitted them with this. So we worked with Yamaha of Japan, we worked with Suzuki to enable, because rowing fishing boats to a certain level was a very, very tough job. It was a very manual job. We brought in new technology. So this enabled them to go use new technology, new engines which could take them much further into the sea, new fiberglass crafts, new fishing nets, which enabled them to get a higher production and productivity from their catch. But the life of fishermen is very tough. One day you get a catch, the second day you don't get a catch. It's very erratic. And secondly, because of that erratic life, fishermen are prone to drinking. And therefore the challenge was, it's very important to open their bank accounts, form their self-help groups, because when we were providing all this, we did this as a loan, not as a subsidy. And therefore forming their self-help groups so that they could repay over a period of time. So we had to open their bank accounts at that point of time. Opening their bank accounts was a challenge, because know your customer was a challenge. We used to chase physical bank managers. It used to take us 7-8 months chasing bank managers. Know your customers. And we opened bank accounts for them so that from their daily catch, 50% could go as a repayment and 50% they could use for their day-to-day existence. And the challenge was that there was no way you could get the price of fish, because fish used to pass through 18 different middlemen, and the fisherman, he was getting only 25 to 30% of the marketed price of the fish. So how do you ensure that in the market price, the fisherman gets a higher return on his catch, rather than selling it to some middlemen, traders who then sell it, keep selling it, and by the time it reaches consumers through transportation, it goes through 18 different hands. So we introduced beach level auctions on the ground, so that there was an intersection of demand and supply on ground, and he could get a higher return on the catch. And then, in several cases, fisherwomen used to carry baskets to the city, so we introduced completely new buses where the baskets could be kept at the back, and the fisherwomen could sit in front rather than going through the menial job of carrying it. We started with one bus. Today about 20 odd buses run to the city of Trivandrum, and fisherwomen are able to, because in the normal buses you could not keep fish baskets because consumers travel. And therefore, they could then take the fisherwoman bus and transport it to the city. All this led to self-help groups being formed, their bank accounts being opened, their production going up, beach-level auctions being introduced, and because we had opened their bank accounts, they could repay their loans, and because of this, fisherwomen could have a much better life. So you could impact in terms of marketing, you could impact in terms of production, you could impact in terms of new technology, and this model then spread all over Kerala. That is what a good public policy is able to do in terms of transforming the lives of almost 20%, 18 to 19% of the population of Kerala, which is the fishing community. And it had a huge impact in terms of enhancing and improving the quality of life of the traditional fishermen. Then, much later, I was transferred and I ran, because of my work in fishing, actually I ran into some major challenge with the communist government, because they started nominating some of these middlemen into the boards of the fishermen cooperative societies. Whereas my view was that only the actual producer, that is the fisherman, should be on the board. I was transferred out and I was actually without a posting for about 8-9 months. Without a posting. That is also a part of your existence as a public civil servant. And that point of time I thought that's the end of my career, because the government got after me really badly. But at that point of time, nobody had heard of Kerala as a tourism destination. People used to travel to Rajasthan, or they used to go to Kashmir. And after 8.5 months, I was posted as Secretary Tourism. And Kerala that time was a very low value tourism destination. You would get cobblers and garbage collectors from Manchester coming on chartered flights to Kovalam. That was the only product everybody knew about Kerala. When I became Secretary Tourism, I thought this was a good opportunity to develop Kerala as a travel and tourism destination. But my view was that two things we should do. One is to take it up the value chain as a public policy. That is, make it as a high-value destination. Secondly, we should take Kerala back to its roots, because 200 destinations are competing in the market space. All of them are competing on the same products, and everybody is trying to ape the West. I said, instead of aping the West, we should differentiate it by going back to the roots of Kerala. And therefore, we closed Kovalam for about almost 1.5 years and did up Kovalam, because Kovalam, because of low-value tourism, had led to a lot of encroachments. It had led to very low-value tourism. The beach had been spoiled. Rampant illegal construction had taken place. We closed it for 1.5 years. In the process, we developed the backwaters of Kerala. We revived houseboats, in which not a single nail is used, and all carpenters with expertise had gone away to the Gulf countries. So we brought them back. We built houseboats. Houseboats used to be used to transport rice from the central part of Kerala to Travancore part. We revived that. We brought back Ayurveda. We went back to the traditional martial arts of Kerala, Kalripet. We revived Kerala cuisine. That time nobody had heard of, appam and stew and fish moili. We revived all that. We went back to all the traditional art forms of Kerala. But more important than that, Kerala's architecture was very pretty. It was Nalkittam houses. All of them were being sold as firewood. And people had gone to Gulf and they'd started making brick and mortar houses with bright green colors, very red colors, pink colors. We brought back the traditional architecture of Kerala, and all the traditional houses were restored. And many of the new boutique resorts that you see here are all, that you see now in Kerala, were all revival of the traditional architecture of Kerala. But important thing was that we stopped charters and we took Kerala up the value chain. From $20, we took it up to almost $500 a night destination. We said we'll not sell it as a mass destination, but we'll sell it as a high value destination. Before that, Haryana had developed as a tourism destination, but all the resorts that had been developed were developed by the government. We took a contrarian policy because our belief was that tourism is a private sector activity, and all resorts were developed as boutique resorts in Kerala by private sector. And important thing was that everybody used to say that Kerala, no industry will ever survive because the unions are very strong, and manufacturing had failed in Kerala. But the same private sector actually did top-class work and showed the entrepreneurial spirit to develop new products and boutique resorts. And the government only acted as a facilitator, as a catalyst, and government's job was to do last mile work, develop the destination, and actually provide destination marketing support to the private sector. So what this led to, the enterprising spirit of Malayalis to develop boutique resorts, the government's ability to support them through destination development like backwaters, houseboats, etc., and its ability to do top-class destination marketing, a great brand campaign around God's own country, and building that brand led to Kerala's emergence as a great high-value destination in the world. And Kerala, for many years, the National Geographic Traveler actually rated it as one of the 10 exotic paradises of the world. And for 7 years in a row, it won the Best Tourism Award. And what this demonstrated is that good policy, where government keeps away from business, where government becomes a facilitator, where government supports the private sector, and where government supports good enterprise, and where there is clarity and consistency of policy, can lead to the emergence of a state as a great tourism and travel destination, even in a state where industry has totally failed. So good public policy led to the emergence of great entrepreneurial state and a great enterprising spirit of the private sector, and reviving Kerala as a great travel and tourism destination. That's what good public policy can do. So when I was tourism secretary in Kerala, actually one fine day I got a call from, and it was a Sunday, I was at home and I got a call, and they said that the principal secretary to Prime Minister wants to speak to you. I was a young officer. So I took the phone and Mr. Brajesh Mishra was put on the line after 2 minutes, and he said that, "Are you the tourism secretary?" I said, "Yes." He said that, "I'm calling you because the Prime Minister will come for a holiday to Kerala." Mr. Vajpayee was then the Prime Minister. He'll stay there for a week, but we don't want politicians, state politicians, we don't want him to be surrounded by anyone. He will stay there all alone and you will be in charge of this. You make all arrangements. So I made all arrangements for his stay in Kerala, in Kumaragam, in the backwaters of Kerala. And I was the only person around him, and I took him out on a houseboat, and Mr. Vajpayee actually wrote the Kumaragam musings at that time, and he stayed there for about 6 days. And so all through the day, I used to take him out and take care of everything there. No chief minister, nobody came there. And actually it was, he just wrote his poetry and wrote his book, and in the evening there used to be some cultural program. But we demonstrated to him that how Kerala had developed as a backwater destination. He could see the houseboat, he could see the Ayurveda, he could see the art forms of Kerala. And then one evening, Mr. Brijesh Mishra, who was there, said that, told Mr. Vajpayee over dinner, because I used to sit on that same dining table, he said, "Is ladke ne bahut kaam kiya, this boy has done a lot of work in tourism, we should get him to Government of India." So Mr. Vajpayee turned to me and he said, "Amitabh ji, aapne apply kiya Bharat Sarkar ke liye? Have you applied for Government of India?" I said, "No sir, I have not applied." So he said, "Nahi, that's very good, bahut acha kiya aapne, aap mat apply kijiye, don't apply. If you apply, Mr. Brijesh Mishra will, instead of bringing you to tourism, will send you to women and child welfare." So that was the end of the story, we forgot about it. I applied 1 year, 2 months later. I was supposed to go to Finance Ministry, actually the Civil Services Board had selected me. Then I get a call again from Mr. Brijesh Mishra and he asked me, "Have you applied for Government of India?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I've applied." So he said, "Do you know where you're going?" I said, "Sir, I'm told that I'm going to finance." So he said, "Do you recall the conversation we had in Kumaragam that you should come to tourism?" So I said, "Sir, but there's no vacancy in tourism," and there was no vacancy in tourism. So he said, "That's not your concern, that's not your business, you get ready to come to tourism." And, you know, they actually, the existing joint secretary, they shifted her out and actually brought me into the Ministry of Tourism as joint secretary. That's how I moved from Kerala tourism to India tourism. As soon as I landed, you know, there was a war in Afghanistan. You know, there was an attack on our parliament, and there was this Twin Tower blast in New York, and there were travel advisories against India at that time. And we had very few hotels and resorts, but they were all at 15%, 20% occupancy. And all tour operators started saying that because of war in Afghanistan and this attack on our parliament, etc., no hotels are getting occupied, no rooms are being sold, and it's a very, they were very, the business was very poor. India's lost out as a tourism destination. And that was the peak of the global crisis after Twin Tower blast, because Thailand, Singapore, all of them had stopped their marketing campaign. And at the peak of that crisis, we launched the Incredible India campaign. And we worked on digital, we worked on, digital was very little at that point, but digital, print, CNN, BBC, everything, we went and did a very interesting campaign around Incredible India, that's how. And that led to the revival of India tourism. And the demand for India through the consumer, because we were going to the tour operators and they were saying that there's just no consumer demand for India. And that time packages used to be sold through tour operators. So we went to them and told them that, please, we will buy your tour packages, we will buy your pages and your brochures, but they said there's just no consumer demand. So the challenge was, how do you revive consumer demand? And we went and did a direct campaign to the consumers of the world, and we revived consumer demand, and the tourism demand for India went up and up and up and up for 6-7 years in a row. And that growth in demand actually led to new airlines coming in, a whole range of new airlines, all this Indigo, Jet, all this private sector airlines came in during that period. It led to the creation of new private airports in India. So Bangalore, Hyderabad, Mumbai, Delhi, there was a need because we were choked. That led to the revival of new PPP airports which India created, and really top-class airports came in. And that's how the demand for India as a travel tourism destination grew in a very big way. And Incredible India became a very renowned campaign across the world and won many, many awards. So a good public policy which aims at driving consumer demand, which allows the private sector to work, can actually lead to the destination being developed even in a moment of crisis, and lead to actually development of a completely new economy in the travel and tourism sector. That's been my experience, even in the peak of a crisis. Much later, demonetization had happened, and I was in Niti Aayog. And at the peak of the crisis, the Prime Minister had asked us to do 100 melas in 100 days and digital melas. And because we had to drive digital digitization and digital payments at that point of time, and we did 100 digital melas in 100 days. UPI had not even started at that point of time. But that, driving those melas, what had happened was that we had been able to create digital identity for all Indians. We then from 2015 to 17 went on to do 500 million bank accounts. 500 million bank accounts means almost 1.5 times the population of USA. And between 2015 and 17, 55% of the bank accounts opened across the world were opened in India. Every second bank account was opened in India. So bank accounts were created. We linked up the digital identity to the banks, and we linked up the mobile numbers to the banks. And that led to the fast payments in India. And today we do 11x more fast payments than what America and Europe do. We do 4x more payment than what China does. And actually, what it led to, the digital acquisition of customers. Before the digital identity, the cost of acquisition of a customer in India was about $30. In Europe and America, it's over $110. But the digital identity, the bank account, when I was working with a fisherman, I used to chase bank managers to open their bank accounts. Today, we open a bank account in less than a minute. So I've seen this journey from 8 months to less than a minute. Now, what happened in India was that a new company like Jio came in and it acquired 250 million customers in 100 days. Nowhere in the world has this happened. 250 millions in 100 days. The cost of acquisition of customer had fallen to $1, from $30 to $1. And that is why this was explosion of technology to population scale at low cost in India. And that is the reason why we've been able to do COVID. During the COVID crisis, we've been able to do 2 billion vaccination shots. We've been able to actually create a vast range of digital products in India, like DigiLocker. In education, we've been able to do Diksha and Swayam. We've been able to do a vast range of digital public goods. And our model is very different from the Western world, where Google, Apple, Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon have done all the innovation. They've done all the innovation because they have access to the data of citizens and they use AI and ML. In Europe, they went for GDPR. They said privacy of data is more important. But in the process, they killed innovation, and so no innovation came out of Europe in the last 2.5 decades. In India, we built the layers, the railway tracks, on which in public interest, we did this, on top of which we allowed private sector to innovate. So India is the only country where PhonePe competes with Google Pay, Paytm competes with WhatsApp, and huge amount of innovation has happened, and that's why we've driven fast payment. But on the fast payment history, you've seen a new set of startups like Lending Card, Pine Lab, MobiKwik, who do credit. They do large-scale credit on the basis of your payment history. So identity, banking, credit, fast payment, all has happened. And then you had a new set of startups who started doing wealth management. So they started doing, moving into Tier 2, Tier 3 cities. They got into rural areas, and this created a new class of people who got into stock markets. And that's why a new startup like Zerodha today controls 30% of the stock market. New startup controlling 30% of the stock market because he was doing cashless, paperless. He was using the digital identity and the payment history and the banking, his bank account, to be able to do this instantaneous transactions on the stock market. And that led to a huge explosion in the stock market, and that led to wealth creation for Tier 2, Tier 3 cities. And then on top of that, so what you are seeing is identity, payment, credit. You've seen wealth creation, and then you had another set of companies like Digit and Acco who started doing insurance, and using digital and same mechanism, they started doing insurance. When I was a young officer, it used to take me 5 months, 6 months to get an policy, LIC policy. They started doing insurance policies in 1 minute, 2 minutes. So our fast payment takes only 30 seconds, and an insurance policy takes 1 minute in India through Digit and Acco. That has been the public policy transformation. Public policy has transformed the life of citizens in India. Because of this digitization, because of using digital identity, blending it with banking, linking it all up, transforming the lives of vast segments of people, which has enabled them to make mobile their virtual bank. Now, it's important to understand this because today in the world, 4 billion people do not have a digital identity. 2.5 billion people do not even have a bank account. And almost 133 countries in the world do not even have a fast payment mechanism. How do you transform their lives like we've been able to transform lives of citizens in India? How do you make it easy? And therefore, that is the challenge before the world, that these countries have to do the right policy framework to be able to do this. And India has the ability to do it on population scale at low cost because of the public policy framework that it built up in these cases. And the challenge, therefore, is public policy. And when I was in Niti Aayog, one of the challenges the Prime Minister threw on us is that you transform the lives of people in 115 districts of India. Many of you would not have heard of many of these districts. You know, Kifre in Nagaland, a range of districts across India. Many of you would never have traveled of them. These are the most backward districts in India. But the challenge, the Prime Minister said, don't call them backward, call them the aspirational districts of India. So the challenge was to transform the lives of people in these districts. How do you do this? And he said, don't use finance. These districts receive the same funds as other districts do. Why do some districts perform badly and others perform well? Because the staff here has low morale. These are far-flung districts. Officials go there for 3 months, 4 months, or they abstain, they don't go there, there's lack of infrastructure, and there is constant shuffling of people, and there's a lack of focus of politicians, and the governance there is extremely pathetic. So how do you transform them? So we picked up 49 indicators, and we said we'll rank these districts on a monthly basis, minute to minute, day to day, on a regular basis. And we started ranking them on delta. That is the change that is taking place on a minute-to-minute, month-to-month basis, and we'll announce ranking and we'll reward the better performing districts. So we were taking the base level and ranking the differentiation, the differential during the course of the month on real-time data. Real-time data flowing in from the district on a minute-to-minute basis on how the change is taking place. That was not possible when I was a district collector. Data used to come in 6 months late. But today, it's possible because of mobile telephony, access to Wi-Fi. Data can flow in on a minute-to-minute basis. And therefore, data for good governance is the key. And we use the power of technology and the data as a public policy to transform lives. What we did was we did convergence of government schemes. We did collaboration with the states, and we started creating competition. So 3 key things: convergence, collaboration with states and all the departments, and competition. And constant ranking of the districts on the basis of their actual performance, on the basis of real-time data. And we started putting out data in public domain so that people could know whether the state is whether that particular district is moving up or moving down. And we started ranking them. And we started saying that this district is performing well and this district is not performing well. What is its rank in the 115 districts? And therefore the citizens And we used the local language to publicize this, and therefore the citizens started questioning the bureaucrats, the district collectors, the district education officer, the health officer, and in all other places, the ministers in charge, and started questioning them. And therefore, putting out data in public domain, real-time data in public domain can be transformational. And that is what triggered this change. So what we saw in the aspirational district program is that constant competition, challenging the district officers, putting data in public domain, questioning them, and putting the ranking in public domain was transformational. And that's how these districts transformed within a very short period of 2.5 years. And that is why a UNDP report, which was done by the Harvard Institute of Competitiveness by Michael Porter, said that this is one of the most important programs because it uses data for good governance. And that is how these districts were performed. And therefore, my own experience from my own career is really that today we have the power of data, we have the power of competition. I've seen this when I was doing ease of doing business, where we scrapped a lot of rules, regulation, procedures. I've seen this when we started ranking districts and states. When we did the ease of doing business ranking for the states, the first year Gujarat came number 1. Next year Andhra came number 1. They beat Gujarat. Third year Telangana beat Gujarat and Andhra. But the good thing was that Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh came 4th and 5th. They were 24th and 25th. They came 4th and 5th. So if the mineral-rich states of India can really transform themselves, you will see the eastern part of India growing, and therefore competition will force them to become champions. Data, putting out data and shaming them will really transform. And therefore, if 10 states of India grow at high rates, if Jharkhand, UP, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan, all of them grow at high rates of 10% plus, India will go at high rates. We'll become a $5 trillion economy much faster, much quicker, and actually will become a developed economy by 2047 will be a high-income economy. So good public policy is about data, good public policy is about government taking a retreat, the private sector creating wealth. The good public policy is about consistency of policy, clarity of mind, and ensuring that intersection with the citizen should only be digital, it should never be physical, and that all government forms should not be more than half a page. They should all be digital, not more than 8 to 10 columns. All rules and regulation in government should never be more than 2 pages. So no form should be more than 1 page, no rule should be more than 2 pages, and no act should be more than 3 pages. This will only happen if there's clarity of mind, because government goes on writing long acts. Government goes on doing long rules and regulations, which then all become questionable in courts of law, and we then clog up our courts. So my view is make things easier, make things simpler, make things as simple, as easy for everyone to understand, and make the country go completely digital. And all the citizens of India actually are very digital savvy. What India has shown is that in the Swanidhi scheme, even vegetable sellers, the common sellers are all digitally far more savvy than the urban people. What fast payment has shown is that even vegetable sellers are far more savvy than people living in urban area. Their ability to absorb digital transaction is much quicker. So my view always has been that public policy is the key to India's growth, and that requires great simplicity, easiness, and clarity of mind, and that requires consistency of policy over a long run, and that requires us to have the clarity of mind that wealth creation has to be done by the private sector, and government must be only a facilitator and catalyst, and should be responsible for just education, health, nutrition, and social sectors. India needs to grow, wealth creation must take place. That should be done by the private sector, but India needs to also do well on learning outcomes, on health outcomes, on nutritional outcomes. That should be the role of the state governments. With these few words, I'll conclude. Thank you very much, ladies.